Hello and welcome to Seymour Sports Corner. I'm your host, David Seymour. I'm an aspiring sports broadcaster who's in school currently to hopefully do this for a living. Just trying to get some practice in front of the camera and the microphone, so I hope you enjoy. What I wanted to do is today's Friday, September 22nd, so we're going into a big college football weekend, and every weekend in the NFL is big. So I just wanted to kind of break down some of the games, let you guys know what I was thinking, how I think they would go, and give you my picks. So the first game we've got on the slate is Texas A&M is an 8.5 point favorite hosting Auburn. Um, Jimbo Fisher hasn't really shown me a whole lot since he's taken over the A&M program. I know Hugh Freeze has gotten the job his first year trying to build his program. He's not quite sure who's playing quarterback or what they're doing there. They've been using rotating quarterbacks throughout the season. And I know Texas A&M has a lot of talent, but it just seems like they always have a lot of talent and can never seem to get it put together. So I would like to take Auburn plus the 8.5. Next up, you have FSU is a 2 point favorite going into Clemson. And I think this is a statement game for both of these teams. Clemson needs to make a statement that shows that they're not behind everybody else in college football. I think Dabo Swinney's stance on NIL money and transfer portal and all of the new changes that are going on with college football, his stance is really boxing him and that university out of being competitive in college football. So it's really a statement for Dabo Swinney and his team that they need to come in and win at home against an FSU team that doesn't quite know who they are yet. They have all the talent. They've been able to put it together a couple of different ways. You know, the big win against LSU to open the season. Then they had to have a come to Jesus game, so to speak, against Boston College last week where they were up big. And Boston College found a little crack and almost came back and won it. And so FSU really had to figure out how to close out that game. And I think that if you look at FSU, what Mike Norvell's built over there, he's doing a great job. And I think he knows what they have, and I think he knows how to put it together. He just needs everybody else to buy in. And once they figure out who they are, and what they are, that's going to be a scary team. And this is the perfect game for them to figure that out. And I think that they go in and handle business. I really think that they win by a touchdown or more. So I'll take FSU -2. Next game is Colorado is a 21-point underdog going into Oregon. And I just don't believe that that's how it's going to go down. I really feel like that Deion's got these kids believing that there's something special. If you caught my last episode, and I spoke on it a little bit, I liken the Colorado Buffaloes to the 1999 St. Louis Rams. There was a lot of turnover there. Dick Vermeil came in. It was his first year as the head coach, and it was just trying to figure things out. They had a huge injury in the preseason that everybody thought their season was tanked, and they bring in the grocery bagger, Kurt Warner, to come in, and he puts together a masterful season. Now, Shedeur Sanders is not a grocery bagger, right? The kid's legit. He was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school that had all of the offers from all of the big schools, and he chose to go to school with his dad. You can say what you will about that decision, but the kid's legit. So, and he's got ice water in his veins. And the truth is in college football, quarterback is the difference maker, right? And on the other side of the ball, you have Bo Nix, who at Auburn was a turnover machine and cracked under pressure. And this is a pressure game, right? You're a 21-point favorite. You have Deion Sanders standing on the other sideline, plus his entourage, right? Whoever he decides to bring out, whether it's Lil Wayne or Boozy or, whoever The Rock, I mean, who knows who's going to be standing on that sideline? The pressure is real, and everything tells me that Bo Nix will crack under the pressure. I don't know if Colorado goes in and upsets them. I will say this: if it's a one possession game and Shedeur Sanders has the ball, give Colorado the ball last, and they win. If it's a close game, and I believe it will be, and I think that's what the game's going to come down to: who has the ball last, and if it's Shedeur, I like the Buffaloes to win that game. I definitely know that they will cover, though. Got Ole Miss is a 7-point underdog going into Alabama. Alabama's not 7 points better than anybody in the country right now. Their offensive line is atrocious. They do have Jaden Milroe starting back at quarterback, which I don't think he should have ever been benched. I don't think he played poorly enough to get benched. But their defense isn't world beating anymore. And I don't know. I don't think that they're 7 points better than anybody. I take Ole Miss on the money line. I know it's hard to say that Alabama loses 2 games in Tuscaloosa in the same year, but I think they lose probably more than 2 games in Tuscaloosa this year. I'm not sure exactly what their schedule is going forward, who all they have coming to their house, but I definitely believe that Ole Miss comes in and wins. I'm taking Ole Miss straight up. Next up, you have UCLA is plus 3.5 at Utah. I almost feel like that this is a trap game. I know they're talking about that the point spread might go up because Cam Rising might be coming back for Utah, and I like Utah to win the game, but UCLA is kind of one of those teams you don't ever know what you're going to get. I do believe that Chip Kelly's another guy that's probably coaching for his job this year. He had all those high-flying, high-potent offenses at Oregon, and you just haven't seen that at UCLA since he's been there. Whatever happened to him when he went pro and that whole experiment didn't work, I think it's carried over. I don't know if he's lost his confidence or what the case is, but the Chip Kelly that you used to see at Oregon just doesn't seem to show up anymore. So it's kind of a trap game. I would stay away from it. I think Utah wins it, but who knows how it's going to go. Utah could blow the doors off of them or win on a field goal at the last second, because Utah's another one of those teams that you just don't ever know what you're going to get. They'll come out one week and play lights out, and then the next week they're scratching and clawing and fighting. So those are one of the games that I stay away from as far as gambling goes, but I do think Utah wins the game. Iowa at Penn State. This is Penn State's whiteout game. They're going to be a 14.5-point favorite. And then this is also one of those trap games, right? Penn State is most definitely 15 points better than Iowa. But whatever the reason is, they always struggle against Iowa. Penn State has a legit quarterback. I think he's a true freshman or a redshirt freshman. So he's going to be around for a couple of years. But when he does come out, he is legit top 5 talent when he comes out. And they haven't had that in a very long time. So this could be a different Penn State go at Iowa. So it's really tough to tell. Also, Iowa's offensive coordinator has a deal in his contract that says if he doesn't average 25 points a game, that he gets fired at the end of the season. So we already know he's coaching for his job. So it'll be interesting to see. They've got some talent on the offensive side of the ball. They got the Michigan quarterback that transferred over. So they have a real quarterback in Iowa, probably for the first time in my entire life. So it'll be interesting to see how this game plays out. I do think Penn State should be 15 points better than them, but there's going to be weather. Iowa's got a stingy, nasty defense always. So it'll definitely be an interesting game, but it's one that I'm going to stay away from. I think Penn State wins it, but I stay away from the game all in all. Ohio State is a 3.5 point favorite going to Notre Dame. Um, I like Notre Dame in this. I like Notre Dame straight up on the money line to win the game. Sam Hartman has completely changed that offense around. And if you remember last year, with almost all of the same players, um, different quarterback, obviously. They had OSU had CJ Stroud last year's playing quarterback, but Ohio State struggled against Notre Dame for most of the game. They didn't even really break out until the very end of the game, you know, and that goes to show that Notre Dame just didn't have the offense, right? If they could have scored points consistently, that defense held up beautifully. They played a masterful defensive game against Ohio State last year. So what does Notre Dame have to do? They have to play that same defensive game this year. And now they have the quarterback that can play complementary football with them and score the ball when they get it. Um, Ohio State's defense hasn't really been the same Ohio State defense. Urban Meyer had all of those dogs, the Chase Youngs and the Bosa brothers and all of these guys, and you haven't had any of that since he's left. They have a plethora of wide receivers. Marvin Harrison Jr. is probably the best wide receiver prospect since Randy Moss, but their offensive line's suspect. They've probably got the worst offensive line that Ohio State's had since before I was born, and so that pass rush is going to be able to get home, which creates mistakes by the quarterback who's young and inexperienced. Whereas on the other side, Sam Hartman's 24 years old, has played a lot of college football. He was really good when he was at Wake Forest, and he's just transferred that over to Notre Dame and given them what they needed, what they've been lacking. And so I like Notre Dame to upset Ohio State and start to really put their stamp on this season. That being said, that's all the college games that I really broke down. We all know there's thousands, seems like, of colleges out there if we wanted to break down all of them, but I really just wanted to break down the most important games, or at least the ones that I felt were most important. Keep an eye on that Colorado game, because if Colorado wins that game, Shedeur Sanders has locked up the Heisman Trophy. You can go ahead and kiss it goodbye. You can go ahead and, the Sanders family can go ahead and make their reservations in New York, and he can start writing his acceptance speech, because if they beat Oregon, he locks it up. So let's get into some NFL picks. I'm going to kind of go through in the order that they're played, right? 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and Sunday night, Monday night. And we'll break them all down. So we got Denver at Miami. Miami's a 6.5 point favorite. And I like them to cover that. They're a dumpster fire right now. My Commanders went into their house last week, got down by 18 points, and we came back and won the game. There's the controversial pass interference penalty in the end zone on the 2-point conversion, but whatever. Either way it goes, we came back from 18 points. I would have done nothing but send it into overtime. So, and of course, anything could have happened there. I don't know what the deal is with Russell Wilson. I don't think that Sean Payton wants to coach Russell Wilson. I think this is the beginning of the end for Russell Wilson. And, Sean Payton came in as the coach and put out all of these statements that he knows better than to put out because he worked in the media. And I don't think that it was on accident. I think it was all on purpose. He's setting himself up to be able to get rid of Russell Wilson. How that works out for him with Russell Wilson's contract, I'm not quite sure. Now, their defense is legit, but whoever's calling the plays is, I think it's Vance Joseph is their defensive coordinator, and there's just too much speed on Miami. And that offensive line, I don't know if Tua has been sacked yet this year. Um, they're doing everything they can to make sure that he stays upright and doesn't bump that head again. Um, I would have really have to look that up, but I don't know that Tua has been sacked at all this year. So they're doing everything they can to protect him, and as long as he's upright and he's got a little bit of time, those two speedsters outside, they're going to get it. So give me Denver or give me Miami, and you can have the points. Um, Next up, we have battle of 0-3 teams. You've got the Chargers going to Minnesota, and Minnesota's a 1-point favorite. So they got 1 point because they're at home. I think that this is a super high scoring game. If I'm you, because I'm already doing it, I'm taking the over. Neither team plays defense, which is crazy that the Chargers don't, because they have so much money invested in that defense and so much talent on that side of the ball. And the fact that they have a defensive head coach and can't figure out how to stop anybody is wildly unbelievable. I think whoever loses this game starts to have a fire sale. Um, you know, Minnesota's, they really don't have a lot. I mean, you have Kirk Cousins as your quarterback and Justin Jefferson as your wide receiver. You just drafted Jordan Addison, who's been a nice addition. But other than that, you jettison Dalvin Cook, and now you have no running game. So we went and traded for Cam Akers, who's been hot and cold his entire career. So it'll be interesting to see how this game plays out. I actually think that the Chargers win this game. They go in and upset them. It just comes down to they just have way more talent than what Minnesota has. And if they get into a shootout, I think that even though the Chargers don't play great defense, they played just enough that I think they can win that one. Next up, you have Indy at Baltimore. Baltimore's an 8-point favorite. Anthony Richardson's probably out. He's probably still sitting out with a concussion. They said he didn't practice today. I'm not sure what Baltimore is, and it's hard in the NFL to beat somebody by double digits. And when you say somebody's an 8-point favorite, you essentially mean you think that they're going to win by 10. And when I'm betting, that's how I look at it. I look at it, if somebody's an 8-point favorite, I have to assume that they're going to win by 10, and I just don't know that Baltimore is 10 points better than Indy. Gardner Minshew last week when he came in and played very well. And that's who he is and has always been. Johnny on the spot when you're needed. You can't hand the keys to the franchise to him and say, go win me 17 games. Go get me into the playoffs. Go win me my division. But what you can say to him is, hey, I need you to come in and I need you to give me one really good game or two really good games. And that's who he is. And the Colts do have some talent over there, and they have a great defense. That defensive front with DeForest Buckner and a couple of those other guys, they get after it. Odell Beckham Jr. is going to be out for the Ravens. Zay Flowers has been a great addition. He might win Rookie of the Year if he keeps playing the way that he's playing. But all in all, I just don't know that they're 8 points better. Feels like a trap game to me. I think Baltimore wins it. But I just don't know that they're 10 points better than Indy. Atlanta at Detroit. Detroit's -3. Give me that all day. Detroit plays great defense. They had a slugfest with Seattle last week, and they beat Kansas City week 1. And I think Detroit's for real. I already have a $20 bet with a guy at work that says Detroit wins their division, and I really do think that they do win that division. I think they're for real. I think Dan Campbell and that GM have taken the time to really truly build a culture and bring in the guys that are going to fit that culture. And Detroit's given Dan Campbell more grace than they've given any other coach in recent years. And I think they did that because they truly believe in what Dan Campbell's building. And I do too. And I think he's made it. I don't think Detroit's going to go out and win the Super Bowl this year, but I do think they win that division and they might make a decent run in the playoffs, win one or two games. They may end up in the NFC Championship game. You know, the NFC is not very loaded, so it wouldn't take a lot to do that. And I do think Detroit's real. Atlanta's been playing really good. Arthur Smith's got a good scheme. I was really curious what Desmond Ritter was really going to be able to do in the NFL, and he's actually surprised me. But I just think that defense in Detroit is legit. They've got too many players over there, and I think they're easily going to cover those 3 points. The next game is a must-win for both teams again. You've got New England, who is 0-2, is a 2.5-point favorite going to the New York Jets. If I'm the Jets, I'm absolutely pissed off that anybody is a 2.5-point favorite coming into my house. Zach Wilson should be especially pissed off because he's the reason that they're a 2.5-point favorite. He's an absolute dumpster fire of a quarterback. And if you listen to my last episode, we talked about what the Jets should do, and they should stay put. They should go ahead and get a top 10 pick and figure out what the deal is with Aaron Rodgers. But this is a must win, and it might be a must win if Robert Saleh wants to come back, right? Even if the whole organization's thrown in the towel, I still need to see some fight. And you can't go 0-16, not with this defense, and not with a lot of the offensive weapons that you have. The Jets have lost 14 straight, I believe it is, to the Patriots. So this is a statement win. We need to show some that we can do something. And I think they do. As much of a dumpster fire as Zach Wilson really truly is, I just don't think that New England has the ability to beat them. They just don't have enough firepower on offense. They don't really have a true running game. They have no true number one wide receiver. And I think that defense is going to eat. They're not going to win because of Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson's probably going to keep the game closer than what it needs to be. But I think that defense is going to be able to pressure Mac Jones. I think they're going to be able to shut down all of those receivers. And it's going to be a defensive slugfest. I'd take the under, and I would take the Jets plus the 2.5. And I think once New England loses this game, we really start talking about Belichick being on the hot seat. I think it was already starting to get a little warm with missing the playoffs the last 2 years. I think having Matt Patricia and Joe Judge run the offense last year kind of warmed that seat up when they saw how horrible it was. But I think if he goes 0-3 to start the season and loses to the Jets with Zach Wilson at quarterback, which is what I do believe is going to happen, I think we start talking about the real chance that Bill Belichick is done in New England. And I think he might want to be done in New England. It doesn't feel the same as it has in years past. So I think he might be over it. He doesn't want to quit. They don't want to fire him. And once they go 0-3 and lose to the Jets, I think the grumblings really start. Next up is New Orleans at Green Bay. Green Bay is a 1-point favorite. I love seeing that Green Bay is a 1-point favorite. Just all of the talk about whether Jordan Love was going to be any good. And look, I've watched the Green Bay Packers organization my entire life. I'm born loving football, right? And not that I'm a Packers fan, but I've watched that organization and they consistently do the same things over and over again. and they always draft well. They don't play the free agent market, um, and they're patient, right? They develop, and so we can talk all this noise that we want to talk about how bad Jordan Love was in the couple of starts that he's gotten in his first couple of years, or the garbage times that he's came in and didn't look like he could throw the pass, and all of the bad highlights that we saw from training camp. But the kids come in and played really well. They should have won that game last week against Atlanta. The defense just couldn't stop anybody. Jordan Love did everything he was supposed to do and has been playing lights out. And I'm happy for the kid just because of all the clamor and noise that he's had to listen to as he's coming in to fill Aaron Rodgers' shoes. Probably all the same noise we heard when Aaron Rodgers came in to fill Brett Favre's shoes, right? Now Aaron Rodgers went 5-11 or something like that his first year, and maybe that's what happens with Jordan Love. I'm not saying that Green Bay is going to go on this magical run and Jordan Love's going to win a Super Bowl his first year as a starter. But I love to see that with all the noise and all of the hype and he can't do and he won't do and he's not this and he's not that, that Jordan Love has come out and proven exactly what he is. I'm an NFL quarterback. And he's come out and done that. And I think Green Bay wins this game. New Orleans is dealing with some injuries. And they haven't really shown a whole lot to me with Derek Carr quarterback that makes me believe that they're not the same Saints, right? I really think that they need to figure out their coaching. I don't think Dennis Allen's the right coach for that team. They're one of the older teams in the league. They've got a lot of bad contracts on that team, and I think all of that's starting to catch up to them. So give me Green Bay minus the 1. Houston at Jacksonville. Jacksonville's an 8.5-point favorite. Division games always seem to be closer than what they should be. I think Jacksonville was a 10-point favorite or a double-digit favorite when they went up to Indy week 1. For whatever reason, these division games are always tough sledding. I always try to stay away from big point spreads like this in division games. Now, Jacksonville probably should win by 10. They've got the more experienced quarterback. They've got probably the better defense, the more experienced head coach. But for whatever reason, division games are always a slugfest. So I tend to stay away from them. I think Jacksonville wins the game, but I do think it is a close game. DeMeco Ryans hasn't gotten his first win as a head coach yet. I don't expect him to this weekend either. But I do think that he's the right fit for that job. And they haven't been blown out of any game. The Baltimore game, but even that, if you watched it, it looked a lot closer than what it was. I like that they're letting CJ Stroud go through his growing pains. He's lighting it up. I think he's thrown for over 300 yards in both of his first 2 games. So I really do think that they're cooking something up there, right? It just hasn't all come together yet. And so I look for them to be able to improve on this, and they keep this game close. Now, Buffalo is a 6.5-point favorite coming into my house up in D.C., coming to visit the Washington Commanders. And I'm going to take my Commanders plus the 6.5. We've got one of the best defenses in the NFL. We got a couple of ball hawks back there that we drafted. And Josh Allen likes to give the ball away, especially if he's getting pressure. And that's one thing that we do really well is rush the passer. I would love to see Washington get the upset. As far as money goes, I'm staying completely away from the game. My pick is Washington plus 6.5, only because I think that Buffalo's too up and down, right? And the way Washington's won our first 2 games, they were both resilient, come from behind wins. We shouldn't have been behind with Arizona, but we were. And there's some grit and some griminess to this team that I haven't seen in the years past. You know, we've got the new owner, Eric Bieniemy's running all the practices, so they're practicing different. They're taking different days off, um, and I think he was the right fit for the job. You know, I'd love to see him be our head coach next year, and I'd love to see Washington upset Buffalo, not because I'm a fan, because I'd love to see these boys getting talked about nationally. You know, we don't get any love ever. We don't ever have a quarterback. You know, we don't ever have the star power or the firepower. And, you know, with Dan Snyder as the owner, there was the only time we got into the to the national media, there was something going on. So I'd love to see us upset Buffalo and start getting some national attention for some good things for the way that we're playing on the field. You know, the last time we won the division with a losing record. It's not anything to write home about. Um, don't know that we can win the division this year. I would love for us to, obviously. But Philadelphia and Dallas both look really good. Um, the one thing that I do know is that Buffalo does not really try to run the ball at all. And when Josh Allen starts getting too much pressure in his face, he starts throwing up prayers and turns the ball over. If you do that against us, we will beat you. And so I think we absolutely have a shot to win this game. I don't know that we do. Um, I'm not going to pick the game one way or the other than I'm going to say Washington plus 6.5. And I'll be in full gear rooting us on Sunday. So next game is Tennessee at Cleveland. Cleveland is a 3.5 point favorite. I really feel like that this should be one of those games like the Chargers Minnesota game or the New Orleans Green Bay game where the home team's a 1 point favorite. I don't think either of these teams are really good. Cleveland re-signed Kareem Hunt this week to replace the injured Nick Chubb, and I think that's going to be really hurtful to Cleveland's game. And on the other side of the ball, Tennessee still has Derrick Henry. And Tennessee just has this grit about them. I think Tennessee wins the game straight up, and hopefully nobody else gets hurt in this game because that was a gruesome injury. But I also think that Mike Vrabel's just got this magic about him that he comes in and wins these hard fought, tough fought games. And, you know, they lost week one and then they came from behind last week to beat the Chargers. And I just don't think that Cleveland's got anybody that's world beater on their team. You know, Myles Garrett's probably one of the best defensive ends in the game. But who else do you have? Deshaun Watson's a shell of who he was before he got in all the trouble. You don't have Nick Chubb anymore. Amari Cooper's been quiet as a church mouse since he's been in Cleveland. It's probably the worst move for his career. So I don't think that Cleveland has what it takes to win this game, and I think Cleveland's just going to Cleveland and be one of the worst teams in the league. Got a quarterback that's on a fully guaranteed contract, so they're stuck with him for the next few years, and I don't see it getting any easier for him. Next, we have Carolina at Seattle. Seattle's a 5.5 point favorite. I'll take Seattle with those 5. Really, it's 6, but I think Seattle's definitely a touchdown better than Carolina. Carolina can't pass protect, and now you're bringing in an older, less mobile quarterback into play, Andy Dalton. Bryce Young's going to be out for the next 2 to 3 weeks with an ankle sprain. And they just don't have any talent over there at Carolina. They've got a great Brian Burns is a great defensive end. But they just, you know, they've got a couple of players here and there, but nothing to put together a full roster that of anybody that says that I can go into somebody else's house and beat them. Next, we have Chicago at Kansas City. Kansas City's a 12.5 point favorite. I think they might beat them by 21 past the joystick type game. Justin Fields talked about playing robotic this week, and the coaches clamoring at him and giving him too much information. And so I, like everybody else, am worried if Justin Fields is even able to be an NFL quarterback at this point. If in year 3 you're at information overload, when really at year 3 you should be getting everything, and this is where everything's supposed to start slowing down for you. Um, it's kind of scary to hear that. So I think it's a pass the joystick game. Casey gets up by 21 and pins their ears back. Next is Dallas is a 12.5 point favorite going to Arizona. This is a trap game. Stay all the way away from it. Arizona's played every game close. Dallas just had a major injury. They lost Trayvon Diggs for the season with the torn ACL. So it's easy to say Arizona plus 12.5 because whatever, they've played every game close. Josh Dobbs has kept them in everything, and having that injury could and should affect Dallas's defense to a degree. But it's also one of those games where Dallas seems like they're extremely more talented than Arizona and should just go blow the doors off of them. And those are the games that you always get stuck in. So I stay all the way away from it. Dallas wins, but leave the points alone. Pitt at Las Vegas minus 2.5. Las Vegas is getting the love because they're at home. And I've been thoroughly unimpressed with Kenny Pickett so far this year. I really thought that after the showing that he had towards the end of last year that he was going to come in, but that sophomore slump is hitting him hard. And so given all of that, though, I still like Pittsburgh to go in and upset Las Vegas. I like Pitt to win the game straight up. In this instance, I'm going to say coaching matters, right? And Mike Tomlin's just a better head coach than Josh McDaniels. I think Josh McDaniels is probably one of the best offensive coordinators in the game. He's a legit genius. He made Mac Jones look like the second coming of Tom Brady for a year. And I just don't think he has what it takes to be a head coach in this league. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But that being said, Tomlin gives me the edge. They have the better defense. Las Vegas has no defense. Jimmy G's a hit or miss quarterback. He's a better looking Kirk Cousins. You just don't know what you're going to get. One week you're going to get greatness, and then the next week you might get So give me Pitt plus a 2.5 and a win straight up. We got Philly minus 5 at Tampa Bay is the first Monday night game. Looks like we're going to get 2 Monday night games for a little while until these writers, TV writers and stuff come back off their strike. So we've got Philadelphia minus 5 at Tampa Bay's our first game of the Monday night doubleheader. This feels like a trap game too. Tampa Bay has been playing pretty decent. Baker Mayfield's looked like he's got a resurgent. Funny what happens when you get an offensive line to block for you and a couple of really good wide receivers playing for you. So Philadelphia's defense just hasn't felt like the same defense that we had last year, which is crazy because they added more talent to it in the draft. They did lose a bunch of players in their secondary this year in free agency. So I think I'd take Tampa Bay plus the 5. Tampa Bay's still got a stout defense. It's still got Levante David and all them boys over there playing big time ball. So yeah, give me Tampa Bay plus 5. Los Angeles Rams at Cincinnati minus 2.5. Cincinnati's a 2.5 point favorite, and we don't even know who's going to play quarterback for them. I'm staying all the way away from this game. I don't know who's going to win it. If Joe Burrow's not playing, I'll take the Rams all the way. But if Joe Burrow plays, it's a toss-up. The Rams are a shell of who they were in the Super Bowl. And Cincinnati seems to be the exact same team on offense. But what we're finding out maybe is that all of those players that they didn't think that they needed to spend any money, the Von Bells and all of those guys on defense that they just let walk because they didn't need them. It seems like that maybe they did need them. Maybe they should have figured out how to pay them. This has been Cincinnati's problem almost as long as I can remember. If you remember a few years back, they had Carson Palmer, and he was playing lights out, and they didn't want to pay him, and so he retired until they decided to trade him because they didn't want to pay him. Cincinnati's always had this extra security on their pocketbook, right? We're not pulling out the money for just anybody, and so it becomes the detriment to the team, right? When we're not willing to pay the players that we need to keep around. Every other team figures out how to play these salary cap games. The reason the Rams are but a shell of who they were when they won the Super Bowl a couple of years ago is because they played some salary cap games, right? And they moved money around and they did this and that to fit all of these guys under the cap, and it eventually catches up to you, right? You eventually have to have a build mode, and the Rams are doing that now. I think they're eating like $75 million in dead cap space. The one thing Cincinnati has never done is paid who they needed to pay, and I believe that we're finding the evidence of that stinginess, of that Ebenezer Scroogeness coming out right now with Cincinnati because they've started 0-2. They've already said that they're not going to re-sign T. Higgins. All those contract negotiations have stopped. He's not going to take number 2 money when he's a number 1 wide receiver, even though they have Jamar Chase as their number 1 wide receiver. So I would stay all the way away from this game. Flip a coin if you really have to bet on it. If you're itching that much to bet on it, you might want to get some help because this is a game that I don't even know if I want to watch it. I'll watch it if Joe Burrow's playing. I love Joe Burrow. But he hasn't seemed to be the same player this year. And I know he's dealing with the calf injury and stuff like that affects a quarterback tremendously. So if I were the Bengals, I think 3 games into the season, it's really hard to start 0-3 in the AFC and be able to get through, especially in that division. So you got to figure out how to get that thing better. I'd get some specialists in there real quick to look at that calf, but you have to be careful with it, right? Because who is dealing with the calf injury in the preseason other than Joe Burrow that is no longer playing this season? Aaron Rodgers, right? Calf injuries lead to Achilles injuries. So I'd be super careful with that because I'd much rather throw in the towel for the season if we have to for Joe Burrow's health and know that I got him for the next 5 years on some big money than have him go out there and tear his Achilles a couple of years after tearing his ACL. And all of those things start to add up and make a quarterback feel different. Look at Andrew Luck, walked away from the game because he was tired of the pain that he was dealing with. I don't think that Joe Burrow's that kind of guy. He loves this shit too much, but at the end of the day, you gotta worry about the investment long term than short term. Sometimes you just have to have a throw in the towel year, let everybody get healthy, and come back and try it again. So that's all the games that we got. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Tune in next week, probably on Wednesday. We'll release another episode and we'll give out some awards. I'm going to give out some tattoo awards. What we're going to do is players and teams that played horribly, we're going to give out the tramp stamp to, and guys that really went above and beyond and played lights out, we're going to give the Tupac Thug Life tattoo to. So we'll give out some tattoos on Wednesday, figure out who did what. We'll check back on these picks that I made and see where I was right and where I was wrong. So thanks for tuning in.